right, I am back with another Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League video. I will never forgive them for making the title that long, so it makes writing about it, headlines, and thumbnails impossible. Today is actual launch day, February 2nd, after 3 days of early access that started on the 30th. I got a review code essentially 2 hours before early access started in my region, and I have been pretty much playing nonstop since my goal is to put in a ton of time before an actual scored review. I'm still debating whether to score it because like live services are so tricky, but like I'm also not going to wait a month until a season launches. I don't know. I think it's probably fair to give it a number, but we'll see. This is not my review of it, but I did want to talk about the Endgame a little bit. I know it's day one here, and so why are you talking about the Endgame? Well, you can probably get through the main campaign here in about 9 or 10 hours if you want to, and then I was maybe like 13 because I did every available side quest, which is mostly just sort of building up the vendors who you do not really need until Endgame anyway. We'll talk about the story another time, get into story spoilers. Endgame here, my footage should not contain any real spoilers, I don't think. It's just combat and just shit talking from Brainiac and little quips and things, so there's not really any story components. Don't think it's a shock that Brainiac is still around in some form or another after the events of this game. That's not really been a secret, as you are, the roadmap is continuing to fight Brainiac, pulling things from alternate dimensions and blah, 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 blah. So, there are a few different aspects here, some of which I think work really well, some of which I don't think work at all. Although, in many ways, Suicide Squad is set up for a better endgame than a lot of live service games at launch. Granted, that's not an especially high bar, given how many of these have failed, or how many have taken, years and years to kind of get up to par. I do think that Suicide Squad has learned some things from other games in the genre. I think it's run by the guy who did The Division, or something like that, which makes a lot of sense given some of these systems. Okay, so once you beat the story, you are tasked with going into these else worlds and running something called incursions. Incursions are just sort of versions of the side missions you've been doing this whole time, where it's protect the crystals, or no, shoot the crystals, protect the plants, kill guys to get charges, things like that. I think that's literally the three that are available right now. And as far as I can tell, they don't change. Maybe they change on a weekly reset or something like that, but they have not changed so far. And beating them a bunch has not led to any new boss fights outside of the boss fight you get to sort of introduce the endgame. It's just sort of you just loop around and around with these. And then in order to get the currency to pay to enter these missions in the first place, you need to be doing side missions around the map, some of which are boosted for more XP and damage or whatever for certain characters, some of which aren't. And then when I first started this, there were like these big events like kill a giant walker or kill a terraforming machine that gave like a ton of XP and a lot of the currency. But then I completed those on the map and now they're gone. And I don't know if they come back or not. So it's just sort of alternating between, running these side events in the world and then saving up enough currency to do the main three events in the middle. And those three events are the places where you farm Bane gear. Bane has his own specific set this season where there are different elements that you can get, guns and armor mods and things like that that combine for set bonus effects. The mastery system is tied into these three missions. So you will start at like normal or hard difficulty of like the base game. I kind of recommend doing the whole game in hard difficulty because it's still just not very hard, and you'll get more XP. So it just ticks up the difficulty over time. So like you start and you have the option of doing like mastery 1 to 3. And so if you pick 3, maybe the enemies have like 1 modifier and they're not that tough. Now I'm at mastery 10, which is the mission I'm showing, where they are tougher, and there's double modifiers on the enemies. I don't actually remember how to check what the modifiers are, but they are significantly less annoying than the ones we've seen from like some of the side missions where it's like you can only do damage with grenades, you can only do damage with crits. One of the best parts about the end game is those missions almost stop. There are no more modifiers like that, which you get so used to those, it's like exhausting to keep doing them, and it's like such a relief when they're gone. So I like that aspect of the end game. But you get harder and harder through these mastery levels, kind of rotating between these three different but also very, very similar missions. That will push your kind of overall seasonal, infamy rank. I don't remember all the names of ranks up. And then as you go on, like once you get to like mastery or rank 30, then you unlock some more Bane stuff. And then at 60, you'll unlock some more Bane stuff. And the idea is like you are just farming and farming at higher levels for better rewards. This is what I would consider, so like it is set up for, infinite progression in some ways because you're just pushing yourself and your builds higher and higher. There is also I would say the probably the best mode in the game is this time trial mode where, I'm not filming it, but like you just fight infinite waves of enemies, which is, all anyone has ever wanted from a looter shooter is a horde mode, and so few games actually get them. This is that. This is launching with that. And as you kill enemies, you will get higher and higher mastery levels until either like you run out of time or you die, or if you get high enough, you can just run through the escape portal and bail with your loot. That is pretty rewarding. It's kind of a weird thing because like there's a lot of like dead time between like flying around between zones, and not all of them are like super populated, but there's no objectives. You're just killing stuff to add time to your total and then stay alive. I think it's definitely a good mode, and it is like the one thing that I would say is different than the whole like kill enemies on 3 rooftops thing that we see over and over and over and over. It's like essentially the only thing you do in the game besides boss fights. It is different than that. So, but the problem like outside of that is, even if there is infinite progression, like I'm on day 2 of the end game here, and I'm like, I don't know how many more times I can run these freaking 3 missions. Like unless something significantly changes, like unless there's a lot of resets and those shuffle those missions around and they bring back another boss fight and bring back the terraformers, and like it seems like I'm doing so little. I am just running the same side events and then going into the Elseworlds events, which are the side events just put into a desert or rainy location with some extra modifiers. So that is what I mean when I talk about like endgame diversity. Even if this game is built for endgame in a lot of ways, and there is kind of infinite difficulty progression, it's still not especially good in terms of how it feels to just keep running the same 4 or 5 objectives over and over and over to the point where it all blends together and you sort of get sick of it. So this is generally what I would consider the negative part of the endgame. The positive part of the endgame I found is build crafting and gearing and building out your characters does start to get pretty good. I maintain that there is not enough differences between these characters. Traversal is the main difference. Obviously, these all control differently. 2 of the characters have range melees, not up-close melees, and then everyone has a unique super, but generally speaking, like the skill trees are just sort of about buffing different types of weapons, and then some of the nodes are just like, here's some damage reduction, and it doesn't really diversify them enough for me. And even stuff with like the Bane sets, I'm a little confused now because the Bane sets, like I have them on a bunch of my characters, and now they all have like the Bane effect, and because like the Bane set is not just for Deadshot or something, it's for everybody. So it's a little weird on that front where there just does not seem to be that much differentiation between them. Like Harley is, you can spec more into grenades as Harley, and Deadshot you can spec more into sniping, but it's still, compared to a game that has different classes with like different action skills and wildly different builds, it doesn't feel like that quite yet. However, there are builds you can definitely do, and I'm starting to discover some cool things here. One thing I shared on Twitter was, for instance, if you have a 3-piece Bane set, which does all this stuff with, making enemies crazed, which is like sort of poison/confusion. If you combine the 3-piece Bane set with a Notorious item, Notorious items are essentially unique items with or exotics, whatever you want to call them, that have a specific unique property to them. You combine that, like a 2-face Notorious item, for instance, that I have on King Shark, a pair of blades, combined with Bane set reveals another effect. So the blades now have a unique effect that has to do with the Bane set and like doing damage to crazed enemies in a way that it did not have just by itself. So it's not just set interactions; it is also additional interactions between other Notorious items. So you can see how things can kind of spiral and start getting a little crazier, which is very fun. And definitely characters feel better once you've maxed their trees or are close to maxing it than before. I've maxed Harley, I maxed Deadshot in this video, and they definitely feel better. The problem is like they can get so far ahead of your other characters that like my level 14 Boomerang or whatever is not going to be jumping into Mastery 10 Elseworlds missions, so I just gotta do a whole crap ton of side missions to level him up now, which kind of sucks. So it's a little hard to balance time between characters. After you get them to max, there becomes a Paragon system, Guardian rank system, whatever you want to call it, where anyone you rank over level 30 will give you a point towards just some small stat boost. You know, I'm starting with crit chance. I get 0.5% crit chance per point, and it's a grind because it's going to start to take a long time to, get to these ultimate squad ranks. That said, this game is trying to be built for a really long-term grind, and I don't, as you add more members to your squads across the season, these bonuses should still apply to them, so I get why it's sort of a slow progression. And it's such a dichotomy, because like fundamentally, gameplay is very fun, and it has gotten more fun as I've unlocked more builds, more set items, but it's this weird combination with the gameplay being fun, and then I'm just so tired of running these missions. Like, everyone's like, oh, all endgame, in looter shooters is repetitive, like, what are you complaining about? It's like Destiny, it's like Diablo. But, like, this is like in Destiny, if the endgame activity was running an individual, like, dungeon encounter with probably less mechanics than a dungeon encounter, like, over and over and over, and there were just 3 dungeon encounters that you did forever. And like everyone complains, oh, I'm so tired of running the strike. Yeah, but there's still like 16 strikes or 10 or 12 or however many there are now. And even before Destiny really got, into launching endgame stuff, it still feels like there is more diversity of activities in other shooters than what we're seeing here, even if they have geared this to be like, oh, well, this is infinitely progressible. Like, sure, but we have, the same 3 missions that are the same as all the side missions and half the campaign missions, and then one cool kind of time trial thing, and that's sort of it. And I don't know if build crafting is good enough. Like, I don't really even know what I'm going for now. Like, I have the Bane set on a bunch of characters, I have some good Notorious items. I just don't fully understand, like, what the pursuit is supposed to be now, and I guess I'm gonna start, like, Googling people's builds and like where to find different cool gear, because like I'm still getting some kind of random pieces of cool gear, and once you start the season they open up a bunch of new Notorious items. It's just I'm not 100% sure of the goals, and like that may not be the game's fault yet. I can't really blame a looter shooter's endgame for being a little incomprehensible. That's kind of understandable. This also does apply to like some of the other aspects of this. There's 5-6 currencies, and I have no idea for like the crafty currencies. I truly don't know what like 4 of them are. I know that some are common and some are really rare, but they all mean really nothing to me. I just unlocked the ability to quote unquote elite an item at Toyman, which upgrades it in some way that I'm not particularly sure about. Like there's some sort of like weapon ranking system where you get more kills and it does something. Like I haven't fully figured all of this out yet, and there are complexities to this that may be good for long-term investment, long-term build crafting, but I think they're going to be a little impenetrable for a while for most people. Yeah, so that is sort of what the endgame currently looks like. It feels it aspects of it are fun to play. Like I don't know if you think this looks fun to play as Deadshot, because I don't know if this is a really great game to observe because of how crazy the UI is and stuff. But I will say it is a lot better when you get your hands on it, once you really learn the characters and like how to best control them. It does feel fun. That is something that has been pretty consistent the whole time. But if you were expecting some major changes to how missions work, how they feel in the end game, that does not really happen outside of the time trial mode. Even that is still just killing instead of doing an objective per se. It's just sort of a different structure. So yeah, it's very hard to judge the long-term potential of looter shooters early. I maintain that this is going to be very, very difficult for people to want to latch on to for a long period of time, I think, especially given that I think a lot of people are going to be really mad at how the end of the story ends, and given what has sort of given up in order to produce this live service from a narrative perspective. I'm just very much wondering how many people are still going to be playing endgame stuff by the time the first season drops, and I have very significant doubts that despite it doing, many things right with endgame stuff, if it will attract sort of a long-term player base. But it's too early to judge that. That's just sort of my gut feeling based on how many other looter shooters have failed and how people have reacted to both the concepts of this game and some of its execution in early release already. That's a topic for another day. I will go kind of into my overall review and overall thoughts, I don't know, sometime soon. I'm debating whether to do my review tomorrow or not. But yeah, so that's some endgame stuff. I didn't cover everything, but that's the basics of it at least. And yeah, let me know what you think about all that. And if you are playing now, let me know what you think about the game itself. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.